It's time to rock and roll!
Oh, this will go up like tomorrow morning also.
Oh,
So
great,
we'll
great. Yeah, no,
we'll
that's
tag you
wonderful.
on everything. And you can let people know where they can find you on your socials and everything like that too. And
Sweet. Yeah,
we'll make sure
no.
to plug that. And of course, Julie takes a walk, which we'll get into today on the Waffle Press Movie Hangouts. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Diego Crespo. With me today is my co-host, Universa.
Hey, how you doing? Good morning.
Yeah, good morning and good afternoon to listeners. I always say good morning because I upload Monday mornings, but I understand people don't always listen in the morning,
hmm
you know? Sometimes people are like, "Oh, I just listened this evening," and I'm like, "Damn it!" But that's fine. That's fine. I don't need to express all this personal problem while we introduce our great guest, Shea Vassar, the former critic, filmmaker, comedian extraordinaire. How are you? Nice to meet you over the internet.
Yeah.
How
Nice
are
to
you
meet
doing?
y'all. No, I'm doing all right. I mean, with the world as crazy as it is, I'm doing all right as one can these days. So yeah.
Yeah, well, welcome to the show. We usually open up these episodes by asking people what they're watching recently. Like we're gonna structure this a little differently because this is a little more of an interview about you as an artist and writer. But you watching anything recently? Anything that you really want to hype up or maybe even not enjoy? Because sometimes that happens too,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, no, so as you were saying, Diego, I started off as a film critic. I kind of fell into that when I was living in New York City. I had moved to New York because I thought that you didn't need to have a degree in order to just like be on SNL. So I was like, I just need to be in the right place, right time. And then I answered a Craigslist ad that was not going to pay anyone, but they let you go to like really nice film screenings and stuff. And that's kind of how I fell into that film criticism world. Um, I fell out of it during the pandemic because it was like I was running and gunning and watching all these movies and going to screenings and festivals. And then during the pandemic, I really was like, is this actually what I want to do with my life? I mean, I love movies, I love talking about them, but maybe I want to be more involved in making them. So I started that pivot back in 2020, 2021. So I stopped watching movies for a while and now I'm digging back into them. And so I'm like, I literally have my letterbox open because I feel like I've watched so much, like where people are like, you hadn't seen that before. And I'm like, yeah, unfortunately, it somehow slipped. Um, so one that I feel like y'all are going to be like, well, duh. I actually just watched The Departed for the first time the last week.
Hmm.
What? That movie is so good. But I also really wish someone had kept like a running tally of how many times they said rat during the movie because I want to know how many times they say it. Um, but then even last night, I watched Urban Cowboy for the first time. What a movie for so many reasons. I think it's so interesting that the film is really just painting some of this and like really showing this dark underbelly of toxic masculinity, but in a way where it doesn't romanticize it. But then it's also like a ridiculous movie. Like it's about two men who are like, I'm better at mechanical bull riding than that guy. Like that is the whole over 2 hour movie, which to me, brilliant. I love silly, petty things like that. So those are two I can throw out there. The third I'll throw out really fast is um, maybe about a month ago, I watched The Bride Wears Black by Francois Truffaut for the first time. And I was so in love with it. I've now watched it again. And again, it's like, I think sometimes when you're a critic, you're so close to cinema that you start viewing it as a job only. And now that I'm like, oh, wait, I have the free will to watch a movie again if I loved it, beautiful. I love using my free will for that. So those are the three I'll shout out. But
No, that's great. I have not seen Urban Cowboy, but I have seen the Truffaut film, and
hmm
Departed was my first Scorsese, so that's always gonna have a very
wow,
special place in my
yeah.
heart, you know?
Yeah,
Good
Like,
yeah.
choice.
yeah, yeah. I'm so glad you loved those two, and then I got to check out Urban Cowboy.
It's so
Um,
Same here.
ridiculous. It's a
Yeah.
ridiculous and if at the very least just check out the soundtrack because it
Hmm.
was one of those movies that they made just to put together like a killer 80s country soundtrack. So you have some really, really great, like probably tunes that you're like, oh no, I know this song. I didn't realize it came out for this soundtrack.
Right.
Well, isn't that amazing? Like every once in a while that happens, like with Smash Mouth and All Star, right? And
Oh my
everyone attributes it to
gosh.
Shrek, but no, that was Mystery Men. It was
Yep.
on the soundtrack
Hmm.
of Mystery Men. I didn't know that until a couple of years ago for the podcast I did on it. But yeah, that's always super fascinating to find. And I think you mentioned during the pandemic you shifted away from film criticism, and I think a lot of people
Yeah.
felt the same way. And I'm not here to dismiss the entire medium because obviously we have very good friends in the space as well, and there are very many talented critics, of course. And I'm not besmirching any individual, but I do feel that there's been a drop off in terms of like accessibility and quality writers. And I'm not saying it happened specifically because you left, but I do think maybe you were like you were one of the pillars for a minute there, and then I was like, oh man, there are definitely less people I read now than I did before,
Hmm.
you know?
Exactly. And a lot of my friends have left or pivoted or realized that they were too burnt out to continue with the same passion. And I think that's really what's hard about journalism these days. It really eats you alive from the inside
Yeah.
out. It really is tough, and you have to hustle, and then you have to be up and understand like what people are talking about, what movies are coming out. Just a weird world. And so I'm very grateful for the people who have stayed on, right? Because we do have people that I love to read, but yeah, there has been a major drop off, especially in independent criticism.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if you're friends with Manish Mathur, but he's a friend of the show, and
Yeah.
yeah, I love reading his stuff. Even when I don't agree, he always comes from it for a very specific lens, and it's like that's what it's about. It's not about being
Yes.
vindicated. It's like, what did they get out of it? Will I vibe with it or not? Is a separate part of that conversation, but it's a real art form in itself, and
Yeah.
I hope it gets boosted up again because there's a difference between people making like immediate response videos and putting thoughtful writing or even video. I will give video criticism some leeway. I think it's kind of been uh shit on for a bit there, but there are good people who put in good work there too. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
No, it's shifting. We're just learning how to shift with it, right? I think the whole world and this industry is learning in every aspect, right? It's like if you're a filmmaker, writer, if you're a below the line worker, a film critic, it's like we're all learning how to live with even a film fan, right? Like even just being someone who watches movies, I think we're all learning how to deal with this shift to streaming and monopolies on like who's making films. It's a wild time to be alive.
Hmm.
yeah. Um oh that it's is that your grandpa clock, Gene?
Oh yeah, that was yeah.
No, okay. I no,
That
no,
was
I call it
beautiful.
out because I do love it. I genuinely love it. Because I grew up with a grandfather clock as well. So
Same. I was like, wait, I'm
Hmm.
going back to my childhood right now.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's very nostalgic. I've
Uh-huh.
been to Gene's place too, and I'm always like, yes, but okay,
Reliable
so
clock.
it's yeah, very reliable, just like the arts. So when you start getting into the film criticism, is there any point beforehand where you felt like you wanted to get into the filmmaking side of things? Like, was that like a childhood aspiration? Like, where did that start? Because I'll just say for me personally, like I did have that in the back of my mind. I just never had the confidence until much more recently to actually like
Right.
pursue it, you know?
Because it is, I mean, now that I'm like in pre-pro for my first like professional film, it is so overwhelming. And you can't do this if you don't have the passion to tell the story. But I always wanted to, I think, more write than do the actual like directing auteur route. I did go to film school at Hunter College.
Hmm.
Shout out public universities. I loved my time at Hunter in New York City. And I learned so much there. I really did at the time, though, because of film criticism, thought I would continue in more of an academia route. And I'm glad I didn't, just because academia, I'm married to someone in academia. And so I see that dirty side as well. And again, like if you cannot continue if you're not passionate about it, because you have to just deal with so much red tape everywhere. And so I went to film school. I actually, even when I would write my dad little notes when I was a little kid, I would put my return address as 30 Rock. So I think the dream was always to be an SNL or like a comedy writer. Um, I think that what is so weird is like my parents weren't necessarily not supporters of me being a creative, but they weren't like the people that were like, yeah, you could totally do that. It was always, okay, but how are you going to make money? Like that's a one in a million type thing. So the idea of journalism, I think, just felt a little more secure in a way because it's like your opinions, your thoughts, you're using more of an academic analytical brain than you are like a creative. You have to prove yourself in a different way, I think, when you're a creative. And my mom was like the first one to tell me, you're not going to do this forever. And I was like, oh, but I love it. And she's like, no, you're going to be writing your own stories and making your own stories one day. That's what you've always wanted to do. And I remember being like 21 and being so offended because I was like, how dare she think that I'm not doing something artistic now? And I think it wasn't that she was disappointed that I was writing and on NPR and like some of these
Mm-hmm.
things. But I think it was more of like, I want you to figure out for yourself what your own dream is. And so it was always in the back of my mind. And again, I think the pandemic just was a natural shift. I did, cover Sundance virtually in 2021, which was the weirdest thing ever because someone even brought up the other day, and something that I think got forgotten about during the pandemic is how some people had like virtual ways that you would like meet up with people. So at
Mm-hmm.
Sundance 2021, there was like basically like we were running around like stick figures with our profile pictures in the headspace at like a bar type online virtual. It was a very weird
Mm-hmm.
time. And then I just slowly started shifting. I think it was also hard because I never wanted to write just about Native stories and characters and representation, but I kind of got like put in that box the moment I wrote anything about, and I was like, wait, I've, in college, I like did a whole semester deep diving on John Ford. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of psychological reading and like on the idea of like mental health in women. And so it was so odd that I got put in this box that I didn't feel like I belonged in. And so people would reach out and be like, are you planning on covering like this, and this like old Western BBC show because it has a native character? And I'm like, no, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't plan on watching that. Like, and so it became harder because the things that I wanted to write about became like I wasn't the demographic, right? Like people weren't giving me those gigs. And so I was like, well, fine, I'll just go do what I want. And that's, write and make people laugh. So I started comedy back. I really started getting serious about it in 2022. And I think again, the biggest difference when you're a writer on these bigger projects, you don't get feedback from an audience fast, but you can at stand up. So like with stand up, I've learned more of even like what audiences know about being native, what audiences know about, like, for example, I have a joke I'm working on, and this happens a lot where like sometimes you'll get stuck where an audience, like, I've tried this joke in like 4 different places, right? The audience hates it. It's about Michael Orr, the football player, the blindside guy.
Mm-hmm.
But like, not, I don't think enough people remember the Michael Orr story for it to, and it sucks because it's like, for me, that is such a big pop culture reference.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so you start learning audiences in a different way than like, you can kind of take a temperature gauge of an audience. And so it really helps, I think, story and ideas flow for me in a different way, becoming a comedian, and really focusing on that. And then that here I am. Like, I started writing comedy pilots. I read a lot of screenplays too. That was some advice I had gotten from someone working, as they were like, read screenplays of movies you loved, read screenplays of movies you hated, read screenplays of movies you've never seen before, so read the screenplay and then watch the movie, or vice versa. And so I really started getting into what it looks like on screen. And so I've done that now for about 4 years, and now I'm trying to take something I wrote and make it on the screen. And this is my toughest challenge yet, I will say. It is constantly on my brain. It is literally the reason I don't sleep some nights. I wake up in the morning not thinking about this and only this. So I'm very grateful that we have a shoot date of April, because it's like I'm just ready to get there, right? Because it's been lingering for so long as like this huge project, and it is like no matter how small a short film is, it is still a huge project, and you're still dealing. I've never dealt with a budget like this, and this is a micro budget compared to a feature film or something that like an actual studio produces. So it's just it's fun. You know, the film industry has so many opportunities and so many things to learn, and I just want to learn about them all. I want to try to do it all. Yeah, that's also
Yeah.
just being way too ambitious, because you can't do it all, but I try.
Oh,
No,
never
but
try. Yeah.
ambition's good. I feel I'm trying to be better about like shitting on stuff because, you know, I'm committing my life to this industry. But like, I think there's a certain lack of ambition
Yeah.
with a lot of stuff. So to hear how ambitious you are is really exciting and good. And you say that, making this film is Julie Takes a Walk, which we can talk about.
Mhm.
Um, you said that's it's your biggest challenge yet, and I mean, it's personal. I'm not saying it's not. It's if you say it is, like it totally is. I'm not going to be like, no, it's not. You know, I don't know you so that well. So,
You're
but I
about to
will
call me
say,
out. No.
yeah, but I will say, I couldn't imagine standing in front of people to tell jokes night after night. So to
Yeah.
me, to hear you say that, I think you doing that so often,
Well,
night after
thank
night,
you.
Hmm.
is such a monumental. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how anyone does that. To me, that is like I never need to be part of that. I never need to be up on a stage talking to people.
It's
So
so funny you say
that's
that,
wild.
because that is the exact thing that I don't think most people understand about stand up. But it is true. There's like this joke of like the only way you can be a stand up comedian is if you're not mentally well. And it's somewhat true, because it's basically like you get up there and then you're just like, I'm making this audience listen to me for however much stage time I have. So there's been times I go up there and I am bombing, and I still have to just keep going to an audience that looks like they want to murder me. And then you're like, well, that happened. It happens to every comedian too. And I have a little bit more of like an alt, dry, dark sense of humor. So I'm ready to bomb in a room. I've had people run out crying because I talk a lot about my mom's death, like in my set. I have seen it all. I had one couple here in Oklahoma. I have a really stupid joke. Okay. I have a really stupid joke about the purge. I'm basically saying that I wish the purge was real because I would punch white men in the face. But that means I wouldn't survive the purge because they're the number one demographic with assault rifles. It's a stupid joke. It's so stupid. I love telling it because people either love it or they are like, wow, that's really dark. But I had a couple here in Oklahoma walk out after that joke. And I was
Oh my
like,
God.
that's not even like I didn't say anything bad about assault rifles.
Hmm.
I all I said is that they are the number one demographic with them. I will not survive the purge. And people get offended very easily. And I don't even try on politics. I don't talk about sex. I don't cuss a lot.
Hmm.
I mostly am trauma dumping, and people get mad about it. I love it. It's kind of like a power move, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
could
A little
only
bit.
imagine. And Dean, feel free to hop in with
Hmm.
comments and questions as well. But like, I just think like for a community of people who are supposedly about facts over feelings, you literally just relitigating facts for your punchline seems to
Yeah.
make them very emotional. So
Very,
Some reason.
very.
For some
yeah,
reason.
don't know what that's about. Except that we do. But you know,
Hmm.
Yeah, no, we know, but it's like it's sometimes that reminder, right? It's like because it's I think what makes stand up so different than maybe other art forms is you really have to know how to engage your audience. Whereas I think with some of these other art forms, like even a play, like there's this understanding of double consciousness, right? And with stand up, you're basically acting like like you're placating the audience first and foremost rather than you as an artist. So you have to learn to work with your audience, and I think there is some of that with like I said, plays or movies or any of that.
Mhm.
I just think it's really elevated as a stand-up, because it could be that everyone there just got laid off and hates the world, and they're going to take it out on you as the performer. Or it could be that they had a really good day and they love your stuff for the opposite reason, right? So it's like it's so interesting, that dynamic, and I don't know how to read a room. So so that's why I'm like, I don't have that ability. I do the best I can. So yeah, I think it is kind of like rejection. What is it, like rejection exposure therapy, right? Because it's like
Mhm.
Mhm.
I work hard on these jokes, and then I come up here and there's a chance that everyone's gonna hate me, and then I have to walk away still loving myself. It's kind of fun. It's like therapy.
Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah, just kind of going up there and everything. Any jokes
Yeah,
that landed recently though?
yeah. I mean, there's like a couple that I've really worked at, and I know how to you again. It's more because of the way, like, I record all my sets so I
Mhm.
can listen back. Y'all know, because you're in podcasting, hearing
Mhm.
your own voice sucks. So that you have to get around as well, where you're like, okay, I can't be disgusted every time I listen to myself. And so I record them, and I've gotten like certain jokes down. Um, because again, stand up you have to do over and over again to do well. Like it's just the silliest art form. Um, but I have a joke basically talking about being native and being someone who is very light skinned and getting questions about it. And then I always end it with like, some people will ask me, or some people will tell me, well, I'm a little Cherokee. And I say, me too. I'm only 5'2". And that joke will kill every time. And it's so good because it's true. I am 5'2", and I have had many people say, well, yeah, I'm a little Cherokee. Yeah, same. So it's great because it's from real life too. But
Mhm.
that's like, if I'm ever bombing, I pull that joke out of somewhere. I got it. I got the audience back somehow. So
Yeah.
Oh, look, I want to say like you say that you don't know how to read a room and that maybe that's like, a problem. But like to me that sounds like a benefit because then you can just keep
true.
plowing ahead. You don't have to let those thoughts like hang over you as you're going through the set. You just plow ahead
You
and
just,
then yeah.
yeah, yeah, you just have to get over people looking at you, which is very hard when you're on the stage. And again, I perform at a lot of like more dive bars. Like I don't do the club circuit.
Mhm.
Um, and the hard part about dive bars is usually they have lighting that allows you to see your entire audience, right? Rather than being on an actual like stage. So that is always something where it's like, cool, there's 30 people here and they're all looking at me and we're all on the same level. It's almost like, like it just feels a little bit more like karaoke at times. And that is also scary because I'm not karaokeing. I'm not playing a song, a beloved song that everyone knows. I'm telling jokes about my life. So it's like, I don't know if they're going to like me in the same
Mhm.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, uh, yeah, that's a whole other aspect I didn't even really consider, like the dive bar circuit versus like smaller comedy venues and such. And I have to ask,
Yeah.
Mhm.
have you suffered any heckling
Yeah,
experiences, and
hecklers.
how if you like how'd you deal with that?
I I don't have a lot of hecklers. I did do a heckle show once though, where it was like everyone in the audience was encouraged to heckle. And my favorite part was, so usually at these smaller shows, they'll like give you a light to tell you like wrap it up, right? And then you got to get off the stage. Well, the host, because it was like a heckle show, thought it would be cool to strobe light me, but then got upset when I didn't realize the light was going off. And I was like, yeah, that feels like a you problem. So I was able to throw it back really easily.
Mhm.
And then the other heckle story actually is somewhat recently. When I was in New York in November, I was the heckler. I went.
Whoa.
I know. I was a little too stoned, and I went to this
Mhm.
open mic, and they had a guy open, to get the vibe in the room, and he was like, "You guys know about Metrograph?" Which I know y'all are in like California, but Metrograph is
Mhm.
like this like artsy, film people. And he was like, well, I got fired from there once. And I was so stoned. I forgot that I was at a comedy show. And I went, wait, I've been fired from Metrograph. And then it was like, I just like ruined this guy's set because he was like, oh, why did you get laid off? And I was like, oh, I had a panic attack and they didn't like that. And they were like, he was like, oh, I just got laid off because of COVID. I'm not going to tell that joke anymore. You ruined it for me. And I was like, I am so sorry. But yeah, so sometimes like, I think that my brain forgets I'm in comedy spaces and then I become the heckler, or I'm like, oh, this is a conversation between me and the person. It is not. But then I just carry on the conversation with the person anyway. So it happens.
Yeah.
Nice. And so you and your husband, when you guys meet, obviously before you're married, does that happen in the comedy space? Does that happen in the art space? Does that happen in college?
Yeah, so okay, I moved to New York in June of 2016, and I didn't get hired on SNL very fast, obviously. And so I needed to get a job, and I got a barista job, and he worked at that job with me. And so that's how we met. And then I pursued him very heavily. Because we worked together, I had his work schedule. So, and I didn't have a lot of friends there at the time because I had just moved to the city. So I would like show up on my day off and know that he had like the next day off and then be like, oh, like if one of you, my wonderful coworkers, happens to have tomorrow off, like we should go to brunch tomorrow. And then Anthony would be like, well, I have tomorrow off. I had no idea. I definitely didn't orchestrate this. But we've been together now like 8.5 years in total, married. Oh God, I think three. So I think we're at this point where that's very much our dynamic is like, I'm kind of the outgoing, like I'll tell you exactly what I'm feeling person. And he's a lot more stoic, wants to read a book, doesn't need to be around people, like very content with himself. And so he has told me he was actually very happy that I was pursuing. And it felt good because my whole life, coming from this like more Christian, like strict family, my mom would be like, you don't call boys, they call you, like, oh, you can't be the pursuer. And then the fact that like the person I ended up marrying was the person that was like, no, I loved that you were always telling me what you wanted, what you were feeling, like you were very open, like you did all the work. And I was like, thank you. And that is just, I'm good at producing. I'm good at coming up with narratives, and so that's why I do what I do. And it also worked out. So
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
I see why you're into comedy. You yourself are like a comedy protagonist. Your life, not
thank
not that it's
you.
funny. It's just like you have such a compelling narrative drive that exists in the real world, and like
Well, thank
you make
you.
stuff happen. And it's nice to hear that you and your husband compliment each other like that. And
Yeah.
even though you maybe have different personality types, it's like, oh, okay, I see
Yeah.
how just from that description, like I see how that fills your guys' world out together. That's very
Yeah.
nice
He
to
helps
hear.
keep me leveled. Like I was a bit crazy in my early 20s, and then when we met, I started, that doesn't mean that like, we started dating when we were living in New York City. So like the amount of times he's held my hair in like a subway station so I could throw up, and you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we were in our early 20s in New York together, and now that we're in our 30s, it's like kind of nice that we have these wild stories, mostly because of my decisions. It's fine, but we can laugh at them now. And he keeps me more grounded, and I kind of bring out a more like outgoing side of him. And so it's just like a really nice balance. I used to feel really guilty talking about it because so many people are like, oh my God, dating sucks, dating sucks. And yeah, it does. I'm sorry. But for me, it just kind of happened. And I realized so fast that this was my person, and I just went for it. And sometimes I think people need to have like a representation of what good, true, like modern love looks like, because we like, not saying we don't fight and stuff, but we don't have to try very, very hard. You know what I mean? It's like we've chosen to be together and we enjoy hanging out. We start our morning every morning with coffee and a record. Like we have a pretty good vinyl collection. And so Sundays we listen to the Beatles. So it's Sunday with the Beatles every Sunday, I guess. So
Yeah.
so like we've figured out how to really make life work for us as a couple. And that doesn't mean it hasn't been hard. I mean, he just got a job and had me move back to my home state of Oklahoma. Like, gross. But you know, it's fine. It could be worse. And we're really just like fortunate. We're really, you know, and we weren't looking for each other. We didn't meet on apps. So it's just, yeah. Thanks for asking me. No one ever asks me, and I love talking about it because it's like, it's the best thing I ever did was pursue the person I was like, oh, I'm gonna marry him. Like, I told people that after meeting him once. I was crazy. I was 21. So that's why I said
Everyone
things like
is
that.
insane when they're 21. Yeah, you shouldn't
Exactly.
feel
I'm
bad
like,
about that. No, if
yeah.
I know we have some younger listeners, and like, God bless you guys. You're so stupid, and that's okay. You're supposed to be.
It's
You're learning.
exactly. And I'm so happy that I was so dumb in my 20s. Now I feel like I'm a little bit more like I'm a 60-year-old than a 30-year-old, but you know, I'm working on bringing the youth back into it. So
Yeah.
No, no, definitely. I think it took me an extra minute to shake off my 20s. I am
right.
also now in my 30s, and I think I've definitely very recently calmed down. But like literally yesterday, I was like, I'm supposed to go out, but I don't think I
My
want
back
to.
hurts.
I think I want to stay in
Exactly.
today. No, Gene,
It's
my back didn't hurt or anything. I was just like, no, I don't think I want to. Like, I'm gonna just say like, sorry, I'm not really up for it today. And like, that's fine.
But what you said about being sore or like something hurting, also
Mhm.
true. Like
Yes.
I had to go to a chiropractor literally like a month after I turned 30 for back pain. I was just holding stress wrong.
Whoa.
I didn't even know that was a thing you could do, but my body's like, yeah, no, okay. And it was a horrible, dull pain for weeks. And I finally was like, I guess I go get this checked out. Like, I didn't have this before, you know?
Hmm.
The lovely part of being in your 30s is the mysterious things that start happening. And you're like, this is really fun and cool.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or like, oh,
But
my
yeah,
body's making a weird noise it hasn't before. What's this? I stretched my arm. What is that?
right.
Or
Like,
yeah.
is my hip supposed to crack like that? Like, it's really loud now. So yeah, it's fun. I don't miss my 20s though. I'm glad I'm out of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I definitely feel more confident in my 30s, and I feel uh like I know what I want to go after now more than
Yes.
before, which is a very
Yes.
nice feeling to have because my 20s was a lot of I don't know about this. I definitely think I want this, but I'm
Right.
just thinking it. I don't know if I'm going to pursue it, and it's a lot of wayward of exploratory stuff, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, much more at peace, at least with the direction of everything now, which is
Exactly.
very nice feeling to
Mhm.
have.
I think, yeah. Yeah. And I also like my sleep a lot more. So like you were saying, is like I don't need to go out as often because I love my couch. I
Yeah,
love it. It's my
yeah.
favorite place.
Oh yeah, no, totally. And even just like the ways I'm sleeping now, I did wake up like sleeping wrong one time, and that was
Mm.
I felt a little embarrassed by that. I was like, no, like I'm in pain because I slept kind of on my
Right.
side, and I was doing like this cork twist thing, and it's like, no, I can't do that. I just got to be a little careful,
Yeah,
stretch
you
in
have
the
to be
morning.
more intense. Exactly. Stretching, like actually like doing little workouts, like, you know,
Mhm.
just to, it's not even just for like weight loss or anything, but because you're like, I need blood circulation. Like,
Yeah, really. Like I used to pound coffee in my 20s, and I still love a good
Mhm.
cup of coffee, but I'm down to like I don't have it like more than 3 days a week. Now I might have a lot of coffee those days,
that's
but like
impressive.
thank you
Mhm.
very much. Yeah. I've been very strict about that regimen. Like um I could have it today, but I only
Mhm.
had it twice last week. Like
Ooh,
and that wasn't even
yeah.
like I'm extra limiting myself. I just like didn't feel the need to have it. But I do have like green tea, you
Mhm.
know.
Okay. So you
Um
found
Good
an
substitute.
alternative.
Yeah, and then like
Nice.
since getting in like more involved in photography and actually like getting paid for more of that work too, like just having a camera on me all the time, like I could walk for hours and not be tired because I'm like, oh, I'll take a picture of that, take a picture of that, and then it's like, whoop,
Yeah.
like 3 hours later, and I don't feel exhausted even though I've walked like several miles. Like that definitely helps. Like it gives me something to strive towards, and I don't think about the need to exercise, even though everyone should exercise a little
Yeah.
Everyone
bit.
For
should,
sure.
right.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's definitely like more intentional. We've been doing some like hit workouts like here at the house just because it's cold and we're not walking as much. Or like I run when it's warm enough outside, but when it's cold, it like hurts my lungs. So I become a very big wimp. But so we're trying to do like, just like home workout stuff. And I feel ridiculous, but it's like, again, it's more about just keeping your body moving and like breath and like, you're just, that's part of getting older. You start being like, oh yeah, is this healthy for my heart? Like, it's so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, and even just just like the little bits of it. Because when I was younger, I was like, I gotta work out and I gotta bulk up. I have to be like pouring sweat if I don't look like shit
Yes.
after. And it's like, no, you don't. You don't have to do that. Don't worry.
Mm.
Everything, as you get older, you realize everything is better done piecemeal. You know,
Yes.
Yeah.
and that comes to Gene can also attest to this as a filmmaker himself. Like
Hmm.
coming up with these story ideas, how to get this produced, how to get it made. Like you can't take it on all at once. It will come at you all at once when the time is right. No, don't worry
Right.
about that. But you
Hmm.
have to plan everything out. You have to think about your shot list. You have to think about who you're going to cast, how to get it made, where to get it made. So for Julie Takes a Walk,
Yeah. Yeah.
what comes
So,
like how do you come up with this concept? Um, do you have like any big inspirations creatively? It doesn't have to be filmmakers, it could be, but like what drew you to this narrative? And could you actually explain the narrative? Because I realized I didn't explain it to Gene.
Oh
hmm
yeah, no
Yeah.
worries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
So yeah, no, Julie Takes a Walk is it started as a pilot script, a pilot that I for anyone that's listening that wants to give me the money to either make it a feature or a 6 to 8 episode miniseries, I am here. But basically it's Julie is in a large Italian American family, and moments before she walks down the aisle at her own huge wedding, her parents come to her and they're like, "Hey, you're adopted." And so, obviously shocked, she runs off. She steals her fiance's car, and she ends up at a dive bar in a small town on the other side of the state of Oklahoma. And when she goes in, is where she meets Cass, who is a native, obviously butch bartender, and like both of them are kind of like these birds in cages that were looking for an opportunity to get out, if that makes sense. So it's like
Hmm.
with Julie, she's never had any reason to question her family. With Cass, being a gay native woman, um she kind of underplays a lot of her who she is in order to keep the cultural and community connections she has. um and so it's just kind of like it's really supposed to be like, oh wow, all this shit had to happen for me to be in this place at this time to meet my person, right? And I came up with the idea because so I was technically adopted.
Hmm.
I was raised with my Irish American dad and his second wife. So a lot of times when I talk about like my mom who just died, I'm talking about that woman. So I love my parents. Like they did the best they could. Most parents do try to do the best they can, I think. But obviously they didn't instill in me an importance of being like a native woman. And it was kind of taught to me as a kid, like everyone in Oklahoma has like a card, right? Everyone in Oklahoma is registered. Like it's nothing. It's just,
Hmm.
it was almost like telling people you were like part of the Girl Scouts, right? Like it was on that kind of level. Like, and so it wasn't until I moved to New York where I was like, I have these government cards that say how much native I am, which is also
Hmm.
ridiculous, but very true. It's what they give us. But I want to know more. I want to know more of what this is. And so I started digging into that. And so some of this is really a way to tell parts of my story without it being my direct, like I don't want to be Lena Dunham, I don't want to be native
Hmm.
Lena Dunham, like I'm not
Yeah.
trying to do like, I've tried to write stuff like that, it never hits the same way. And I think for me, I have to really remove my own self from the narrative, but have authentic feelings that inspire the narrative. And so that mixed with someone had actually, who's like kind of big, I guess, had
Hmm.
reached out and asked me to write a rom-com about a girl going back to the reservation and falling in love. And so I actually tried to write this story, and where it would be like a triangle, like a love triangle between a white guy and a native guy, right? Like she would go back to the res and fall in love, like all this. And I was like, I think this is gay. And
Cool.
me, I'm a bisexual woman. And obviously, when I moved to New York, I thought I'd only date women. And then again, like I said, I met my husband. So I was like, okay, not a lesbian. I do still like men. Um, and now we're married. So I didn't really get the opportunity to continue dating women in the same way. And so I think what's really beautiful about being a writer is you can explore parts of yourself that are there, but maybe you don't have the opportunity to live out. And I know that sounds very closeted. It's
Mhm.
not. It's like I feel very, confident and like my biggest supporter is my husband, which is also the funniest thing to say about a sapphic rom-com I'm writing, right? But it really is something that I just think is so beautiful and wonderful, and something that in the same way with my native identity, I wish someone had taught me that like who you are as like a queer person is also so much more encompassing than just like a title. And so like me being married to a man doesn't make me any less queer. And so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna write and make a sapphic rom-com. And then with my pilot script, I was the 2024 artist in resident with the Sundance Institute's Native Lab.
Cool.
So I actually got to workshop the script a little bit, and they gave me a small grant, and I was like, okay, so I have enough money for production. I don't have enough money for post, but I got to do it. Like, that what else am I supposed to do with this grant? Like I
Mhm.
have either I can workshop it even more and maybe pay to do like generals or try to pitch it.
Mhm.
I could have used it for that, and I was like, no, let's just do a proof of concept. And so um, somehow now I am making a proof of concept of this short film or of this story, and
Mhm.
in a hope to expand it, and to really give life to this world, which is such a fun. I've been living in it now for 2 years. It's a really fun world.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about working with Sundance, just at the lab and everything?
Yeah, no, I don't know about Sundance as like a whole, but I will say from their indigenous team is really supportive,
Mhm.
and it's a tight knit group that really is like I even when they heard I was in pre-production, like we jumped on a meeting. They also do, I think it's every couple months they'll do like a Native Lab alumni social hour, where we can all get on and like meet each other so we can meet different people from other cohorts. It's I really feel like really the support mostly from like the indigenous team, and the way that they're like, what can we do, like can we read your script, can we give you feedback. And I think it's cool that it's like it wasn't just a 1 year thing. It's like I really have those connections for life now, and unfortunately we just don't have as much of that in the industry right now for people who to break in. It's like, it's really hard, and I'm glad that Sundance is still doing what they can to help support future filmmakers, because it's we just don't have the accessibility in the same way anymore.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, no, well said. Yeah, needs to be more community.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's the best part. It's like, yeah, we love to get together and talk shop, but it's like we are still human at the end of the day, and
Mhm.
making like friends. And one of my producers was a Native Lab fellow the year before me, and so we're able to use like our connections both together and separately in order to produce this. It's still so weird to me that I'm making even a short film, right? Like it's like I'm just very happy, very stressed, but very happy. And so it feels like such a dream come true.
Mhm.
No, that's really great to hear, and I didn't know you got a grant from Sundance. That's really exciting here too. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I agree with you guys completely about the community aspect, and unfortunately, it does look like for this round of filmmaking generations, it is going to require a lot of us independent people coming together and just kind of making shit because
Yep.
the doorways are just not there. The people who are supposed to retire and let new people in are just not doing that anymore. They just decided
No.
not to, I guess. Look, I get it. Capitalism sucks, but because we live under it, who doesn't like money? I do understand that.
Right. I
But,
want to pay my bills.
yeah, and like it's gonna take a lot of independent stuff. And that sounds very like cynical, I think, but I have been very optimistic that this generation, our generation, and the ones right behind us too,
Yeah,
are going to be able to do like, if not a full-on digital revolution, I think there will be another wave of like 90s style independent films, I mean,
agreed.
the much more different than comedy, but like the Terrifier films, I think have been a sort of inspiring touchstone. Maybe not in terms of my enjoyment of them. I'll just leave it at that.
Right. Right.
But in terms of
Understand.
just like, oh, this can like work. People will go see these movies that have no studio backing. They were just made
Right.
truly independently. That's something we need to like keep striving for. And I genuinely hope that happens with Julie Takes a Walk. And
Thank you.
in the pre-production process, how's it going? I mean, if I could just ask that, like, how's it looking? How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. We are like we haven't announced it yet, but we have found our cast, which is interesting. You put out a casting call for a soft butch native person, and you're like, am I gonna get someone, right? And because you know that these people exist, but it's also so few queer native, really any kind of like minority queer person gets the opportunity to really break into this in the same way unless they are going to somewhat dilute themselves, right? And we didn't want that, and so we even encourage non-actors to apply because um, sometimes non-actors are exactly what you need for this kind of project. And we did find someone that really fits, and we're very very excited. um, it's interesting because I feel very hopeful, but also have this horrible anxiety that it's going to be the worst thing that I've ever put my hands on. And I think that's just natural. I think it's natural for you, for any artist to have this thing of like, it's so precious to me, but how is it going to be received? What am I actually good at what I've always wanted to do? Or am I going to find out at 30 years old that I'm not good at this? I think those are all natural human things. And like you said, we don't have an independent film world in the same way, and so a lot of us are out here trying to pave these paths in ways that we didn't have someone in front of us doing. And so I think it's weird. I think the fact that we're in this like very data social media heavy thing is very weird because I know I have a lot of anxiety about the fact I'm posting like on every social media every day about our crowdfunding, right? And that's just like, that's not like following the Instagram rules, right? Because it's like we've gotten into this world where a lot of people who are artsy, they're like, oh, I post once a month and it's a little bit more like, makes me look more mysterious. And I'm not that kind of social media user. I think if anyone is listening and they thought that of me, it's not a surprise that I'm not, because I just post anything and everything. Like I'm like, here's me, here's my dog. I don't have a dog, but if I had one, I would post about it a lot. And so it's like, I think it's hard when you're like, okay, now I'm driving everyone insane by talking about this project that I desperately need money for. Well, we're technically in a recession. No one's calling it that. And yeah, it's hard. It is hard. And I think it's very vulnerable. Um, and but I think that's what's going to make it more worth it, to be honest, is it's going to make it something that is beautiful and communal. Even this upcoming Friday, I'm hosting a comedy show to help raise money for the last of our funds, and I'm doing it in Tulsa where we're shooting, and also where a majority of the story sets in the Tulsa area. And I just thought it was important to not only bring awareness to the film, but it's like the number one thing that executives say about stories like this is there's no audience for it, which is just ridiculous. And I'm not going to take that. So I'm building my own social media presence. I'm doing my own work to get an audience excited for this because I, I'm sorry, people love rom-coms. You're going to tell me because it's queer and native, people don't want to watch this? That's ridiculous. People watch that horrible Glenn Powell, Sydney Sweeney movie. Okay. They can watch my stuff. So that's how I feel about that.
No, that's great to hear. And If there's a link people could donate to, because you have the GoFundMe as well, right? Or is it
Yeah, through Seed and Spark. So
the
Seed and
Seed and
Spark is
Spark?
like
That's right.
GoFundMe for filmmakers, really, and
Hmm.
they're a great like they helped me put the campaign together. They give you feedback, and they so if anyone is like looking to crowdfund a project and not just film, like I know they do a couple of like or they'll case by case pick up campaigns that are for like one woman shows or comedy specials, things like that. So it's really a great platform just to support creators and storytellers, which I think is really, really again needed. We don't have this like indie film scene. I think it's going to come back, but I think unfortunately I'm like not to be like, oh, I'm going to help bring it in, but I think it's like people like me who are like, we don't have the resources to help these stories get told. We have to do it ourselves. And then with me learning how to navigate this, my hope is to help other filmmakers do it because I think there's also a really horrible mindset that gets sometimes stuck in these creative communities where they're, we got to gatekeep. There's not enough space. Like that. No, there is like you said, capitalism sucks and we live under it, so of course that scarcity mentality is going to set in, but like I'm really trying to fight against it because it's like there can be more than one woman filmmaker, there can be more than one queer filmmaker, there can be more than one native filmmaker because we're all doing different things. We're not all, no one can tell the same story the same way. So I think it's important for us to keep that in mind, especially when the industry is trying to tell us the opposite.
No, completely. And it's like, look, there's always going to be some like plot similarities in certain films,
Yeah,
whatever. But it's like, what's that joke from like Knocked Up or something like that, where it's like, Volcano Dante's Peak, and it's like whatever. Like it doesn't matter. Like if there's a voice there, that voice is going to come through, even if
exactly.
people dismiss any superficial similarities, because the superficial stuff is not what we go to these stories for. You go for the
No.
personal telling of these stories. And so yeah, the Seed and Spark link will be down below on all versions of this episode on YouTube,
Mhm.
SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes. um uh and I just wanted to say that I realize I am the only person in the world, I guess, who didn't hate the Sydney Sweeney Glenn Powell movie,
Oh,
because everyone else had not
uh-huh.
exciting things to say about it. And I was like, I thought it was all right.
I
And
just
everyone,
felt
It's
so bad
okay.
for Glenn Powell because he's such, how do you not have chemistry with Glenn Powell, the puppy dog of all actors? And I
Mhm.
just felt like Sydney Sweeney was giving him nothing. And I was like anyone could have chemistry with him. And so the fact that she felt so sad
Mhm.
compared to him. It was still a watchable movie, don't get me wrong. But my point being, people want rom-coms.
Yeah.
Um, and usually
Yeah.
they're pretty affordable to shoot. I mean, comparatively to these big, the return you get from a simple romance comedy film is pretty high compared to like when you look at the budget. So it's like because you don't really need special effects. It's
Mhm.
very simple, and a lot of times you really only need two main actors. So I think it's a silly format that we keep forgetting about. But also you brought up horror, and horror is like the place to look at if you want the blueprint for indie filmmaking. Horror has always been leading that movement. So yeah, I've been trying to revisit some like even classic horror films that kind of break that Hollywood structure mold, because horror, if you look at the horror movies, which I know I don't, every time I talk about horror movies, my dad thinks I'm talking about horror movies because I do not, I don't think I have a bad Oklahoma accent, and then certain words. So yes, I am talking about HORROR movies. But like even looking at what's coming out now and what's being made on these smaller budgets in the horror like genre, I really think is representative of similar movements that are going to happen in other genres. It gets me really excited because I think we had some really, really top notch horror movies, especially in the last couple of years, and a lot of them were on a much smaller budget, or maybe they got picked up by a A24 or someone that helps with the distribution, but they were still made very independently. And I think that's absolutely beautiful. So,
Yeah, it's I don't want to give the game away, but it's something I've definitely talked to Gene about
Hmm.
getting ready for this year. So
Hmm.
I guess so I guess someone stay tuned. But
Yes.
yeah, I mean you're totally right about like these things not costing too much money, and like they shouldn't. Like so many of these budgets are like just so overinflated in like the Hollywood system. It's like where's
Yeah.
this overhead going? You know, it's like you,
Where, right?
yeah,
Hmm.
like it shouldn't be that expensive for some of these movies, and I just don't understand. And I know you want everyone to get paid their due. That's
Right.
not, yeah, that's definitely not the
Yeah.
argument I'm making. I'm
Yeah.
not making an argument against that. It's just what I don't know. We don't have to get into all that, and I don't want to keep you here forever. Although
Oh,
this
I could talk
conversation has
forever.
been
So y'all keep going. I mean, no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
no, no. I mean, we'll have to bring you back before and after Julie
Yeah.
Takes a Walk is all wrapped up. But yeah, I mean, you're welcome back anytime you want to talk about anything, and I promise we won't pigeonhole you into just talking about specific stuff regarding your gender and
Hmm.
native roots. Because
Well, thank you. I
yeah,
believe
Yeah.
you when you say that too. So thank you. Because some people will say that and then they'll only reach out and be like, "Do you want to watch like come on my podcast and only talk about Dances with Wolves?" And I'm like, "No,
I
what?
wasn't gonna say it, but I was like, I'm not gonna. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no, no.
No, I never want to talk about Dances with Wolves." So
Mhm.
unless you want to make fun of Kevin Costner because he's kind of silly in that movie.
Mm.
Anyway,
Kevin Costner is a very silly man, and
yes,
I do admire him because he seems like a really like blue collar, like true blue working class
yeah,
guy,
Nice
even though
enough
he's a
guy.
wealthy Hollywood actor.
Yeah.
sure.
And he definitely pissed off the right people in the last couple of years. We need to get into all that too, but I really had a lot
Hmm.
of respect for him for that.
If you ever
Um,
want to talk, I did. Okay, so we moved to Oklahoma, and I love a Sunday night show. Like when we have like when White Lotus is back, right? Like a Sunday night communal, we
oh
watch it every week.
yes,
Like I
yes.
love that. So we started watching, oh, this is so embarrassing. Taylor Sheridan's Landman because it was
Hmm.
coming out every Sunday.
Hmm.
That show is ridiculous. So if y'all ever want to talk about Taylor Sheridan, let me know because I'm always like, I'm both amazed and weirded out by everything he puts his hands on. Because I'm like, why is this so popular? But also, why did I watch it? Like
Yeah.
I was obsessed with Landman for like a month.
Popular for boomers and older people.
Yes. My dad then told me that he watched it. And I was like, yeah, no, that fits. That fits. You wanted to watch the Billy Bob Thornton Taylor Sheridan combo. Yep.
Yeah. Hey, look. Yeah. I've got opinions about him as well. I'll just leave it at
Mhm.
that.
Strange guy.
Yeah, strange. To
Yes.
end that on a positive note, I will say, hey, look, it's really impressive that you can write all that. But if you're in TV, there are these things called writers' rooms, and I guess a
Yes.
lot of streaming TV shows just forgot about that for some reason. I don't know why. That's like the bread
Do
and
not
butter
know.
of TV versus film.
They don't want to pay them,
Yeah, that's
unfortunately.
really it.
And
Yeah.
it does, and it has made where some of the streaming stuff, it's like that's why things aren't getting a second and third season is because your first season wasn't very well written.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
yeah, no.
Mm,
I know
yeah.
we could go on that one.
Yeah, we could
Yeah.
go on, but Gene, any final comments or questions for Shay? And then Shay, after, if you have any final comments or anything you want to plug specifically along with
Okay.
Julie Takes a Walk, please.
Mhm.
Yeah,
No,
let's
no,
wrap
yeah,
this up.
yeah, no. Thanks for being on the show. Yeah, wish you the best for the production and everything.
Yeah, no, I appreciate y'all wanting me to come on here and I love talking about like just film and storytelling. So it's always a great excuse to spend a Sunday talking about movies. I'm not
Hmm.
mad at it. But yeah, no, if I'm everywhere on social media at just Shea Shea Vassar Vassar, except on Letterbox, which if you find me on Letterbox, I will follow you back, but I will not
Hmm.
tell you what my name is.
Oh.
Um, and
Valid.
then Julie Takes a Walk is on Instagram at just Julie Takes a Walk, one word. And yeah, you can also find that stuff and all the info on my socials. So that makes it kind of easy. But
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on.
no, thank y'all
Hmm.
again.
Yeah,
Thank you.
this is great to finally talk face to face. The recordings I have seen of your comedy on your TikTok are so funny
Well,
and
thank you.
charming. So yeah, please keep that up. Uh, are you're doing shows out there for to fundraise, and then you're keeping the engine going as well,
Oh
just
yeah,
between production?
I'm keeping the engine going. This first like quarter, I'm not doing as much stand up, but my dad's going to be in town for that fundraiser show, so I'm actually writing some jokes for. He's seen my regular
Mhm.
stuff, but I'm like he's probably tired of coming to town and seeing the same set. So I'm writing some stuff so that he can have some things to look forward to other than my dead mom jokes. I'm sure
Oh,
he's sick of those. But yeah, no, I think after the summer, after post starts, I can get a little bit more stage time in. Pre-production has taken up any free time I have, which is understandable.
Yeah.
You got to put your
yeah,
whole
no,
heart and
totally.
soul into it.
Yeah. Gene just shot a short back in September,
Mhm.
and there was a good like couple weeks where it was just like either radio silence or because I
Oh,
didn't work on that one, but I had other friends that
uh-huh.
did, and they were like, yeah, Gene was he was looking a certain way, and it's like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I get it, I get it. It happens. That's what happens in
Uh-huh.
pre-production. So
Yep.
yeah, best of luck to you on all that, and
Well, thank you.
links
Mhm.
down again to everything. And Julie Takes a Walk specifically below in the episode. Gene, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry about your technical
Yeah,
difficulties,
it looks
but you
like my
know what?
camera went out.
Look, it happened. It's just a camera. What is a camera? At the end of the day, uh, at least on the internet, you need a camera to make a movie, but you don't need one
Look,
to
for
record a
the internet,
podcast.
for a
So,
podcast, yeah, like it you make it work. I
Yeah.
also think it's so funny though. It's like we've all been so on Zoom since 2020 and we still deal with technical difficulties
Mhm.
every time someone is on a Zoom meeting. Like it doesn't fail. It doesn't fail. So
Yeah.
it happens.
yeah. But thank you everyone for listening. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Check out Shay's work. Check out Gene's work. Check out my work. Always looking for more photography work. So if you need headshots, anything else, I'm always looking to add to the portfolio. Gene, editor extraordinaire. Always looking to edit more stuff in between making moves, making shorts. Hopefully we'll have other exciting stuff to share soon. We'll be back with more episodes in 2 weeks, and then we're going to be keeping the ball rolling. The retrospective series will be back as well. Matt and I are going to wrap up the failed fantasy blockbusters, failed critically at the box office, but not always in our hearts. And we're going to swing very big with the finale for that. I don't want to give that away yet, but I will be a changed person after, hopefully for the better. We'll see. Thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for watching. We have been professionally unprofessional.